They always said Marcus Anderson was just a friend, a loyal confidant, someone from Meghan Markle's past who simply never went away. But the truth is, people who were close enough to watch never believed that version, because friendships don't leave fingerprints on every major decision of someone's life. Friendships don't quietly survive fame, marriage, royalty, and exile, and they certainly don't inspire confessions whispered off record that shake an entire narrative to its core. When Marcus allegedly said, "We've always been close, intimate even," that never changed, not even after Harry. It wasn't gossip that made people uneasy, it was recognition, because suddenly, too many moments from the past snapped into place. Long before Meghan Markle became a duchess, before palaces and press wars and carefully scripted interviews, there was Marcus. He wasn't famous, he didn't need to be. His power came from something far more dangerous: access. He understood rooms, hierarchies, and the unspoken rules of elite spaces. At Soho House, where discretion is currency and relationships are leverage, Marcus didn't just work, he curated. He watched who mattered, who wanted to matter, and who could be useful to whom. And when Meghan entered that world, she didn't stumble into opportunity, she was guided. Their connection formed quickly and deeply, not as a whirlwind romance, but as something quieter and more enduring. They moved like partners who understood each other's ambitions without needing to speak them aloud. Marcus opened doors Meghan didn't even know existed yet. Designers, producers, tastemakers, private gatherings where careers were nudged forward with a whisper. And Meghan trusted him completely, because he never presented himself as someone trying to take. He positioned himself as someone building alongside her. What made their bond different was how it adapted. As Meghan's profile grew, Marcus didn't fade into the background, he adjusted. When she traveled, he appeared in the same cities. When her image shifted, his connections shifted with it. People noticed how easily they communicated, how little explanation they needed between them. It wasn't loud, it was efficient. The kind of closeness that comes from years of shared momentum, shared secrets, shared strategy. By the time Prince Harry entered Meghan's life, Marcus wasn't an accessory, he was infrastructure, and that mattered. Because Harry didn't meet a woman starting fresh, he met someone whose life already had a rhythm, a support system, and a central figure who had helped shape her ascent. At first, it didn't feel threatening. Marcus was charming, relaxed, non-competitive. But there's a difference between a friend and a fixture, and over time, that difference becomes impossible to ignore. This is where the story truly begins. Not with jealousy, not with scandal, but with an invisible triangle that formed quietly and solidified long before anyone thought to question it. A triangle built on history, loyalty, and a kind of intimacy that doesn't disappear just because a new chapter starts. And once that triangle existed, everything that followed was shaped by it, whether anyone wanted to admit it or not. As Meghan and Harry's relationship accelerated, the presence of Marcus became harder to explain away. Engagements, interviews, planning sessions, even moments meant to be private all seemed to orbit around a constant gravitational pull that led back to him. People within royal circles began to notice that Meghan deferred to Marcus in subtle ways, not publicly, not overtly, but instinctively. When she hesitated, she looked to him. When she felt cornered, she spoke to him first. And when things went wrong, his voice carried more weight than anyone else's. Harry sensed it before he understood it. There was a shift in Meghan whenever Marcus entered the room, a lightness, a confidence that didn't appear for anyone else. She wasn't guarded with him. She didn't perform. She didn't curate herself the way she did with palace staff or even with Harry. That freedom was unsettling because it revealed something raw and unfiltered, a version of Meghan that existed outside the royal narrative. And Harry, who had spent his life craving unconditional loyalty, couldn't ignore the implication that someone else had already earned it. At first, Harry tried to rationalize it. Marcus was from before. Marcus had history. Marcus had helped Meghan survive an industry that chews people up and discards them. None of that felt threatening on its own. But patterns don't need intention to become problems. Late-night calls that ran too long, private meetings scheduled during moments of high stress, trips that coincidentally overlapped. Each detail alone was harmless. Together, they formed a picture that didn't fit the fairy tale. What unsettled Harry most wasn't suspicion of infidelity. It was something deeper and harder to articulate. It was the realization that he wasn't Meghan's first call in moments of uncertainty. He wasn't the person who had shaped her instincts. He hadn't built the foundation she stood on. Marcus had. And that kind of influence doesn't disappear just because vows are exchanged. It lingers. It informs decisions. It quietly competes with everything that comes after it. Inside the palace, advisors noticed it too. Marcus's name surfaced in conversations where it didn't belong. His opinion carried weight without title or role. He existed outside the hierarchy, and that made him unpredictable. Institutions fear what they can't control, and Marcus Anderson couldn't be managed with protocol or tradition. He wasn't staff, he wasn't family, he was something far more dangerous, a witness with proximity. When Meghan and Harry stepped away from royal life, many assumed Marcus would finally fade. Instead, the bond appeared to tighten. Removed from palace oversight, Meghan leaned into the relationships that had always felt safe, and Marcus was at the center of that circle. Harry noticed the shift immediately. Without the structure of royal duty, there was nothing buffering the dynamic anymore, just three people navigating a relationship that had never been clearly defined. Then came the confession, quiet, casual, devastating. Marcus didn't frame it as betrayal or revelation. He spoke as someone stating a simple truth. Their closeness never changed, not even after Harry. That sentence alone reframed everything. It suggested continuity where the public believed there was separation. It implied that marriage hadn't replaced a bond, only added to it. And once those words escaped, they couldn't be contained. Once Marcus's words surfaced, the past stopped being theoretical. It became forensic. Every photo, every appearance, every moment Meghan and Marcus had shared was re-examined with new eyes. What once looked like friendly familiarity now appeared loaded with meaning. His hand on her shoulder lingered too long. Their smiles looked too easy. Their proximity too consistent. And the more people looked, the clearer it became that Marcus hadn't been orbiting Meghan's life. He had been embedded in it. Inside Meghan and Harry's private world, the impact was immediate. Harry didn't explode. He withdrew. People close to him noticed the change in his posture, the way he listened less and watched more. He began replaying moments he had dismissed, times Meghan defended Marcus with unusual intensity, situations where she minimized his importance while simultaneously ensuring his presence. The contradiction gnawed at him. Trust doesn't usually break with one revelation. It fractures slowly, along the fault lines that were already there. The moment that hurt most wasn't the confession itself, it was what it implied, that Marcus knew Meghan in ways Harry never could, that he understood her instincts before she articulated them, that he had been there when she was forming the version of herself Harry fell in love with. You can't compete with history, you can only coexist with it, and Harry was realizing that coexistence had come at a cost he never agreed to pay. Behind the scenes, advisors were alarmed. Marcus wasn't just a friend making careless comments. He was a liability, someone with access to pre-royal Meghan, early royal Meghan, and post-royal Meghan. He had been present at private gatherings, discreet trips, unguarded conversations. He had seen how decisions were made, how narratives were shaped, how pressure points were managed. And now he had demonstrated something far more dangerous than malice. He had shown a willingness to speak. That's what shifted the story from gossip to threat, because Marcus didn't need to exaggerate. He didn't need to invent. The truth, delivered calmly, was enough to destabilize the carefully maintained image of a singular love story.
His restraint made his words more credible, not less. Silence had always been his power. Speaking selectively made him unpredictable. For Meghan, the situation was suffocating. She found herself trapped between two realities she could no longer keep separate: the man who had helped build her path and the man who had joined her at the end of it. Both represented safety in different ways. One offered familiarity and unconditional belief. The other offered partnership, visibility, and legitimacy. Losing either felt unthinkable, but keeping both was becoming impossible. Publicly, nothing changed. Smiles remained, appearances continued. The narrative held, at least on the surface. But privately, lines were being redrawn. Meghan became more guarded, her circle tightened, communication became more controlled. Markus, sensing the shift, stepped back just enough to avoid escalation, not disappearing, just receding, a reminder that restraint can be more powerful than presence. And Harry, left alone with his thoughts, began to understand something unsettling. This wasn't about betrayal in the conventional sense. It was about priority, about who someone turns to when the cameras are off and the stakes are high. And once that question enters a marriage, it never fully leaves. It waits, it watches, and it changes everything that comes after. By the time the dust settled, one thing was clear to everyone watching closely. Whatever Markus Anderson represented in Meghan Markle's life, it wasn't something that could be neatly categorized or quietly erased. Some relationships don't end when circumstances change. They simply adapt, shifting shape, hiding in plain sight, influencing decisions from the margins. And that was the unsettling part. Markus didn't need to be present to matter. His influence had already been built into the foundation. For Harry, the realization came with a painful clarity. Love stories are supposed to simplify life, not complicate its past. Yet the more he reflected, the more he understood that Meghan's past hadn't been left behind. It had been carried forward, curated, managed, but never fully released. That doesn't mean deceit in the obvious sense. It means something subtler, emotional continuity, a reliance that predates marriage and survives it. And once that understanding takes hold, it reframes everything. Moments that once felt like minor discomforts now felt like signals. Markus being consulted before major decisions, Markus being defended more fiercely than anyone else, Markus remaining a constant while others faded. Harry began to see that his role hadn't been to replace Markus, but to coexist beside him. And that realization left him questioning not Meghan's loyalty, but her emotional architecture. Who had shaped it? Who still inhabited it? Inside the palace, the strategy was simple. Let the story burn out. Don't escalate, don't respond. Because the most dangerous thing Markus had done wasn't what he said, it was what he implied. That intimacy doesn't always disappear when a new chapter begins. That proximity doesn't always end when vows are exchanged. And that the official narrative of a fairy tale romance might rest on a much more complicated emotional truth. Markus, for his part, remained silent. And that silence spoke volumes. People who know him say it's deliberate, that he understands exactly how much power he holds by saying nothing more. Because once you've demonstrated you're willing to tell the truth, you don't need to keep talking. The possibility is enough. It keeps everyone cautious. It keeps doors closed and conversations controlled. As for Meghan, she continues forward, publicly unshaken, professionally focused, projecting stability. But those closest to her describe a woman more isolated than before, more careful, more aware that the past can resurface when least expected, especially when someone else holds pieces of it. The confidence remains, but it's sharper now, edged with vigilance. And so the story doesn't end with an accusation or a confrontation. It ends with unresolved tension, with a marriage that continues but carries a quiet fracture, with a friendship that refuses to be fully defined, and with one lingering question that no statement or photo opportunity can answer. If Markus Anderson chose to speak again, not emotionally, not angrily, just honestly, how much of the story we think we know would survive? Because the most destabilizing truths aren't explosive. They're calm. They don't shout. They don't accuse. They simply exist. And once they're heard, they can never be unheard.